Hello, students. Are you able to hear me? Am I audible? Hello. Hello. So am I audible? Are you able to hear my voice? Okay. So Srimant Mr. Sharma, nickname is there from. So shall we start the class? Sure. Okay. Thanks. Great for confirming. So I just request you please be bit in. We can discuss the things in detail and quickly go through the text, the content we are going to study. So today we will just start. Are you able to see the screen I'm sharing? Are you able to see the screen I'm sharing? Are you carrying the study notes with you? Please confirm in the chat box. What you are carrying the books or you are able to see the screen I'm sharing? Both. That's great. That's great. So today we will just start the customs law, the basic concepts related to customs law. You must have studied in the IDT paper while intermediate level as well about the customs law. Okay, so just starting with how it has customs duty has started or what exactly it means. So in this study note, we are going to study a brief about the introduction, the various definitions. Once we have the definitions defined under the Act, it is easy to understand the Act and the interpretations get easier and correct. Then, what are the circumstances where the custom duty is levied or the situations where it is not levied? And we'll discuss about how the custom duty can be planned, how it can be tax can be managed. So, starting with the basic intro and thereafter the definitions, we'll keep on continuing about the concept. So, as we all know, like when is custom duty is what? It's a type of duty or a charge taken by the government. So right from the early days, as it has been stated in the notes, that Kautilya's Arthashastra also refers about Shulka. Shulka means charging something whenever any goods are entered into a territory or any goods are going out of that territory. Definitely, import means that from any of the foreign land you are bringing any goods, any movable items to the country within the territory will amount to import, and similarly from our land, if anything we are shipping out, maybe through land, maybe by air or by sea to any foreign land, be that will amount to exports. So in earlier days, a duty is being charged whenever there is an in and out of the movement of the goods. It has been charged. Subsequently, the same has been organized through the legislation under the British period. Continuing that, when the constitution has been formulated, then the seventh schedule of the Constitution of India empowered whom? The central government to levy the custom duty. Wide entry number 83 of the Union List. You must be aware of that central government is empowered on all the items that are defined under for all the entries that are defined under Union List. So customs, the government is empowered to impose, to levy rules, regulations related to custom duty as per entry 83 of the Union List of the 7th schedule. Now, what is the term that custom? What is the understanding we are having about the customs? So, normally in the earlier days, how this practice has come, whenever a person starts with a new business, he just come from the other land also and gives something to the king. So that gift has been identified as the customs, because once it is approved from the higher authorities, then they are allowed to sell their product in their territory. So the Custom Act was enacted by the Parliament in the year 1962, and as per the List 1 of the Union List, Parliament an exclusive right to make the laws. That means what all items are presented in the List 1 of the Union List. One of the item is the custom duty, and central government is empowered by the Act of Parliament that under custom duty they can make the regulations related to import and export of the regulations related to import and export of the goods into the country. So why this custom act has been enacted? What is the requirement of this law? Definitely, see the same what all items are being consumed, whether it is heavy engineering or normal products, day-to-day consumptions, everything is being getting manufactured in within our country also, and it can be imported from other countries also. So just to protect the interest of the people who are manufacturing within the country, this Customs Act has been enacted. Because at times, if you are getting any item from the foreign land, which is costing us less as compared to the cost of the same product which is manufactured within our country, then that product becomes really difficult to sell within the country to make the presence. So that's why the government under the custom law has introduced anti-dumping duty. That means no one can dump the product within the country by importing that, which can result in lowering the cost of that product and will not allow to make the presence of the indigenous businessmen who are dealing into that product. So that is why many rules and regulations and many things are being controlled under this custom act by the appropriate authorities to protect the interest of the traders or the businessmen within the country. So, under Section 156 of the Customs Act 1962, that empowers to make the rules and issue notification from time to time for the purpose of the smooth functioning and effective administration of the Act. So, which is the section? It is the Section 156 of the Customs Act 1962 that empowers. Now, as per Section 157 of the Customs Act 1962, as we all are aware, with the invent of the GST, now the Central Board of Excise and Customs is renamed as Central Board of Indirect Tax and Customs. What all we were calling CBEC earlier, now it is CBIC, because all other taxes you must have studied in GST except customs, all others, there are around 17 taxes that have been subsumed under GST. So excise was one of them and has been subsumed, and that is why this board has been changed to this Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs. This is again as per section 157 of the Customs Act. Now, what is the definition? What is the difference between rules and regulations? Who is authorized to make the rules and who is authorized to make the regulations? Now, they say rules means rules are being issued by the government of India, and regulations, what all rules are being issued by the government of India? CBIC, the department under the government of India, they formulate certain regulations, certain frameworks to implement or execute within the framework of those rules. The objective remains the same, what is defined under the rules by the government of India. So rules have to be consistent with the act, regulations have to be consistent with the act and rules, definitely, because regulations cannot go beyond the rules, and both have a statutory force, because CPIC is again formulated under the government of India only, uh, to take care of all the matters related to customs and GST, that is the indirect tax. Now, before going into detail the various provisions, there are certain few definitions, around 22 definitions are there that has been explained. So shall we go these definitions one by one to have a quick understanding? So taking definition number 1 under subsection 1 of section 2 of the said act, they are just giving the definition of the educating authority. So it includes the competent authority, but the definition how it has been given, excluding. It should not include the CBIC, it will not include the Commissioner of Customs, and it will not include the Customs Excise Service Tax Appellate Tribunal. Apart from these three, you can say any other authority that is taking care of all the matters is called the educating authority. Now the assessment. Earlier, assessment means simply to determine the tax liability in accordance with the provisions of the Act. But that assessment was including related to the, if in case there has been any nil duty, that is also covered under the assessment, because unless and until you assess any item, you cannot conclude whether it is the duty will become nil or there is a certain value, duty value is being carried on. So, but as per the Finance Act 2018, with effect from 29th March 2018, the assessment definition explanation has carrying a broader perspective. That means determination of the, if I just go by the definition, determination of the dutiability of any goods and the amount of duty, tax, cess, and any other sums so payable. So it is not only you are seeing, you are able to see both the definitions. Earlier, it was only covering the word assessment of a tax, that means determining of the tax amount. Now, it is covering duty plus tax and the cess if there is any, or any sort of sum that is payable related to the uh, in the form of duty towards the goods, if any. So, under this Act or under the Custom Tariff Act 1975, hereinafter referred to as the Custom Tariff Act, or under any other law for the time being in force with reference to that, means it is not only limited to the assessment of or determining of the tax liability, it also relates to the assessment or determination of the any tax, cess, or any other form of duty, and they have to access that the product on which the duty is being worked out, that product should be defined under the tariff, the Custom Tariff Act, the tariff classification of such goods as determined in accordance with the provisions of the Custom Tariff Act. That means the Custom Tariff Act is carrying the product and their tariff classification. So earlier it was limited to Custom Act only. Later on, they have just taken into the reference of and giving a more clarity to the understanding that yes, we should take into consideration the tariff rates as defined under the Custom Tariff Act 1975 and the value of such goods as determined in accordance with the provisions of this Act. Keeping in view, that means you are considering the tariff classification as defined in the Custom Tariff Act and determining the value of the goods, the assessable value of the goods for the purpose of charging the duty on that as per the Customs Act. And if there is any exemptions or concessions of duty because of certain notifications that has been issued by the government from time to time, then those should be taken care of as per the Customs Tariff Act or as per any other law for the time being in force. And yes, of course, yes, the Custom Act as well. It is not only the concessions or exemptions, but yes, the duty can be assessed considering the quantity, weight, volume, measurement. Means they have just considered all the factors that if there is any variation or if there is any uh, difference or any variables in working out the accessible value of the goods related, that can, those variables can be quantity, weight, volume, measurement, or the origin of the goods, the country of origin of the goods. Maybe because of the country of origin of the goods there is a difference in the rate of duty or any other specified factor that can affect the duty tax cess. That is, from time to time, what all notifications have been issued by the government, considering those, if there is any other specific factor which is affecting the assessment or determining of the tax duty or cess, that should be considered. So this is the complete definition of the assessment that has been amended, incorporated by Finance Act 2018, because all those changes that has come mostly comes under the Finance Act every year the government introduces. Now, the definition of the boat. Whenever we are under in the customs law, when we are studying all the other concepts and details, the understanding of the board, whenever the term board comes, it means the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs. Whenever we are talking about their powers, their responsibilities, accountabilities, and the word board comes, that means we are talking about the CBIC. Now, the term coastal goods. So, what is the meaning of coastal? What do you understand by the coastal? Any idea? Any idea? Can anyone just tell what is the understanding of coastal? Yes, beach. That means the baseline, the territory of India, the baseline across the oceans. So you can see from the Gujarat till your Bay of Bengal, it is all the coastal line. So whenever there is a movement of goods within the territory of India, but through the coastal line, then such goods are termed as the coastal goods. So studying this definition, the term coastal goods means goods other than imported goods transport in a vessel from one port in India to another. If we see just an example below, very nice depiction in this small chart, that one picture is shown of Chennai port, another is of Vizag port. Both the ports are located in India only. So if there is any movement of the goods that is originated from India only and from the one port of India to another port of India, then such goods are known as the coastal. That means the coastal goods are different from the imported goods. This the movement of such goods is from one Indian port to another Indian port using the coastal line. So that is known as the. It can be by air also. It can be by ship also. That is the definition of the coastal goods. And yes, they are giving the further authority or power as defined under the Customs Act that CBIC has been authorized, that is empowered, that by way of notification in the official gazette they can appoint the port, they can designate any port, that exclusively from that port only the as a coastal port, and from that port only the goods can be moved to any other port. The coastal goods can be moved to any other port. So, in the official appoint the port which alone shall be coastal port for the carrying on of the trade in coastal goods or any class of such goods with all or any specified ports in India. That means CBIC has also power to notify the class of goods also as the coastal goods and notify the ports also that these ports can deal with the movement of the coastal goods. So this is the understanding of the coastal goods. Hope it is clear to all. Hope it is clear. In case you are having any doubts, please keep on stating in the chat box. So shall I move to the next definition? Okay, thank you for confirming, Srimant. So subsection 9 of section 2 deals with the definition of the conveyance. Conveyance also has been defined under the act, that it means what? It can be a vessel, an aircraft or a vehicle. When we are making a movement of the goods using through the land, it will be a vehicle. By air, then it's an aircraft, or by sea, then it will be termed as vessel. Whenever we are using vessel, it means it is the shipment has been done by sea. Accordingly, likewise others, the understanding of others. Now, next is the custom area. Custom area. That means the area of any custom station. So these goods will not attract custom duties. The coastal goods, yes, it will not attract the custom duty. The coastal goods will not attract unless and until a foreign vessel enters the Indian territory. And the definition of territories has also been given. So there are few examples given later on in this note where we can just understand when the duty is levied and when not it is. Unless and until any good is going out of the territory of India, or coming into the territory of India, no duty is levied. And it not only covers the sea, but the ground below the sea, the airspace, and the land also. So it covers these three things. So custom area. So custom area means the area of a custom station and includes any area in which imported goods or exported goods are ordinarily kept before clearance by customs. So custom area means it is again a designated area at the ports and where the goods are being kept. It can be imported or exported before the clearance by the custom authority. Any such area is called as a custom area. Now they are talking about the custom port. So custom ports, see, we'll just go through by the definition given under this small box. Like clause A of section 7, the CBIC may, by notification in the official gazette, appoint the ports or airports which alone shall be custom ports or custom airports for the unloading of imported goods and loading of exported goods or any class of such goods. That means again CBIC is empowered to declare any of the ports as a custom port. The definition of the custom port is where you can unload your imported goods or you can load the goods that are being exported. Further, it is not limited to the areas that near the ports or near the airport, but they have also covered the ICDs, that is inland container depots. Normally ports will be near the sea only, okay, but every other company who wants to export or importing the material is not located nearby the coastal line. Many of the most of the companies are staying in the lands also. So custom department has declared few inland container depots. That means within the land they have designated certain area as the custom port. So if anything, any supplier or manufacturer wants to export, they can just fill up their containers and those containers are kept under the inland containers depot, and such areas are also covered under the customs code. So double A of section 7 explains the places which alone shall be inland container depots for the unloading of imported goods and loading of exported goods or any class of such goods is again covered under the definition of customs code. Clear this definition? Okay. Now they are saying custom airports under section 7A means any airport and includes a place appointed under section 7 double A with effect from 28/5/2010 to be an air freight station. That means even the air freight stations. That means air freight station means at time there are certain warehouses. If it takes time to clear the shipment from the customs, goods are stored. That means air freight stations, that area is also included into your custom ports. Or you can say for air freight station, what all goods are going through air, then custom airport also includes the air freight station. Hope I'm clear. I'm making the things clear. It's understandable. So now moving the definition. Okay, thank you, Simran. Moving on to the definition of the custom station. Now subsection 13. The custom station has been defined under subsection 13 of 2. That means includes custom port, custom airport and land custom station. Just now we have studied the definition of the custom ports. Government can notify and appoint under subsection A of section 7 or double A of 7 the designated areas for the import and for loading and unloading of any shipments of related to import and export. So custom stations include all three: custom port, custom airport and land custom station. I'm so sorry. So Now this is authorizing under this custom stations. They have just given section 8 of the Customs Act 1962. They are trying to define the powers of the Commissioner of Customs, like at the customs stations, how the things can be arranged, the movement, the control of the conveyance, and placing of the goods at the customs station. And the power of the Commissioner of Customs related to that is defined under this definition. And specifically, Section 8 of the Customs Act defines the powers of the Commissioner of Customs that they can approve proper place in any custom port or custom airport or coastal port for the unloading of the goods or for any class of the goods. Means they have the power to designate any area, specific area in the custom station for unloading or uploading of any specific sort of goods, any specific sorts of goods, and they also have the uh, authority to specify the limits of any custom area. That means they can just restrict the movement of the conveyance. They can just control or regulate the movement of the conveyance as well as the placing of goods in the custom station. So section 141 further explains, elaborates that all conveyance or any goods in custom area are subject to control of officers of customs for enforcing the provisions of the Custom Act. That they are defining now that the officers of customs, they are empowered, okay, for enforcing the provisions of the Custom Act as defined under the Custom Act related to the movement of the conveyance and the goods in the custom area. But the responsibility ultimately lies with the custodian of the goods to follow those provisions as directed by the officers of customs. Clear? That means the officers of custom has a role. They have the authority to enforce the provisions of the Customs Act related to the receipt, storage, delivery, dispatch, or any other handling of the goods into the customs station. And the custodian of the goods has to abide, has to follow those uh, provisions or the way it has been explained by the officers of the customs. Those needs to be followed by the custodian of the goods. So CBIC is empowered to permit landing of vessels and aircraft at any place other than the custom ports or custom airport. That means in case of emergency, if required, then with the approvals of the CBIC, an aircraft or any vessel can be landed to any other place other than the custom port or custom airport. This has been amended with effect to 10th May 2013. Private or who is the custodian means? It is not a private or can be government. Whosoever is dealing or trading into the goods for a specific shipment, whosoever is there on the port, it can be a private company also, it can be government. Whosoever is dealing into the import or export. Got it? It means like if I'm doing any exports and I am manufacturing garments and I want to export that, and for the purpose of uploading for export, I want to place my goods at the custom station for the custom clearance. So I have to keep my consignment, my shipment at a place that is defined by the officers of customs, how they are governing us or guiding us that this is a designated area for you, you can place your goods over here. So we, in that case, we are the custodian, the person who wants to export their products, that is the custodian of the goods. And we cannot directly go to the custom port. Yes, definitely we hire the clearing and forwarding agents that carry all these processes for us on behalf of the manufacturer who want to export their goods. Is it clear? Okay, thank you for confirming. So Now moving on to the, so clear with the custom station definition. Now we'll move to dutiable goods. Dutiable goods means what? It means goods. One, just now we have studied under the definition of the assessment that for the tariff rates we and the goods, we should refer which act? We should refer the Custom Tariff Act 1975. So any good that has been defined under this act, covered under this act, so that is how we just conclude that yes, on such goods the duty is leviable. So on such goods the duty is chargeable, or on which the duty is payable, are known as the dutiable goods. That means these are the goods on which are chargeable to the custom duty and the duty has not been paid yet, it is payable. Then it is termed as dutiable goods. See these definitions how you are going to use when you are going to get a case study. Then in the case study you will these terms can be used like the goods are dutiable goods. So we get an interpretation that yes, duty has not been paid as of now, but these are chargeable to the custom duty. This is how we can just interpret or apply these definitions when we go through the case study. Now, what is the definition of the entry? What is the definition of the entry? Students, can you just give me a second? A call is coming. Hope it's okay. I am just give me a second.
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hello, hello. Am I audible? Can we continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you for confirming. Okay, so now the next definition is about entry. Entry means what? The definition has been defined under subsection 16 of 2 of the said act. It means entry is made in relation to the goods. It means an entry is made in bill of entry, shipping bill or bill of export, and includes in case of goods imported or to be exported by port. Uh, the entry referred to in section 82 or the entry made under regulations made under section 84 of the Customs Act. It means like whenever we are importing any goods or exporting, there is a document raised by the custom department and entry has been made. A serial number is given that yes, certain goods has been imported. which is at applicable rate is given, the exchange rate, the description of the goods is given on that entry, what is the quantity from where these goods have been procured, and what is the assessable value of those goods, what is the rate of duty that is applicable to such goods, is in everything is defined in that document. So whenever the goods get cleared from the customs, whether we are importing or whether we are exporting, a entry is being raised by the customs department. So that is known as the entry. In case of the import, it is known as bill of entry, or in case of export is known as the bill of export, or otherwise we can also say it as shipping bill. Shipping bill means the bill of entry only. If it is import, it is bill of entry, or if it is export, it is known as bill of export. Similarly, in case of the airway bills also, there is an entry is made when a shipment is sent through the air, means if it is sent through by air. So next is export. Export subsection 18 of 2 of this act simply states exports means taking something out of India to a place outside India. Clear? Now they are talking the exported goods. That means the goods which are being taken from the India to a place outside India. Studying the example in reference to exported goods. Say, very nice example. A vessel sunk within the territorial waters of India. So you might be aware of, like, uh, what is the area that is covered under the territorial waters. Like, means that distance is what that distance is covered into the territorial waters or within the means of our country only. That means if anything has happened within the limit of territorial waters, it means that has happened within our land only. It is not a foreign land. So you must have studied this limit in GST also, and might be at interlevel also. The territorial water extends to 12 nautical miles into the sea from the baseline. See, from the baseline, the coastal line, to extent of 12 nautical miles, if you travel into the sea, till that point, it is the Indian territory only. So if anything happens within that territory, it amounts to happen within our country only. It is not a foreign land. So a vessel sunk within territorial waters of India, and therefore there is no export. So nothing has happened into the foreign land. Ship has sunk within the Indian territory only. So the export has not happened. So accordingly, no duty drawback. Because in case of export, you must have briefly studied about duty drawback. Like, it's a sort of incentive, because government, while making the export, is earning the foreign exchange. So whosoever is into exports of the goods, the department CBIC under the Custom Act offers an incentive called duty drawback. So unless and until, means one can claim duty drawback, or one is eligible to claim duty drawback only when the export has happened. When there is no export, no duty drawback has been claimed by the person who is making the export. So what we have to check in the given example, they could have asked whether the person who is shipping or who is doing the export is eligible to take the duty drawback. In this case, no, because no export has happened since the ship has sunk into within the limits of the territorial water. Clear? So that is why we should know the what export means, exported goods means, and the territorial. Now, what is the understanding of the foreign going vessel or aircraft? Definitely, everyone will say that whatsoever is going to the foreign land outside India will be covered under foreign going vessel or aircraft. So, but this definition also includes a foreign naval vessel doing naval exercise in Indian waters. That foreign naval vessel will also amount to foreign going vessel or aircraft. a vessel engaged in fishing or any other operation like exploring oil or uh, doing some drilling work, which is a joint venture between a domestic Indian vessel and a foreign vessel, but that is happening outside the territorial limits, that is 12 nautical miles, then again it is a foreign going vessel or aircraft. Third is a vessel going to a place outside India for any purpose whatsoever. So they have not restricted from the purpose perspective. Purpose is very clear. If anything, whatever it is going, but it is going outside the land of India, that means it is a foreign going vessel or aircraft. It covers both the goods or the passengers. So if any your aircraft is carrying passengers also, it is well covered under the definition of foreign going vessel. Or now there is a good example. Let's study an ONGC to understand the definition of this only, the foreign going vessel or aircraft. An ONGC vessel and a vessel owned by a limit of USA are drilling oil beyond 12 nautical miles in the sea. Hence, both the vessels are called as foreign going vessels. Is this definition clear? So when we are going to like having a case study, having multiple issues, all these terms will be used, and you have to interpret in this manner only, the way we are expressed over here under the Custom Act. Now, the definition of the goods. Till now, we have studied the movement of the goods outside the territorial limits of the India. Now, what all is covered under the definition of the goods? Subsection 2 of 2 is again governing this definition, and it includes vessel, aircraft, vehicle. These also are termed as goods. Then the stores means the consumables. Baggages, like all the passengers are carrying the baggages. Currency and negotiable instrument is also covered under the definition of the goods, and any other kind of movable property. That means the definition of the goods only covers which is movable in nature. Correct? Below case study is giving a good example whether technology transferred on papers will come under the definition of goods or not, or whether a custom duty will be charged if anyone is importing any technology on papers, will that be chargeable to custom duty or not? Oil drilling beyond 12 nautical miles will be treated as import. Yes, it will be treated as import. If it is drilling beyond 12 miles, you will see one good example in the coming notes. It is giving the same scenario. It is explaining the same scenario. So coming back to this case one, RST Limited imported drawings and designs in paper from और through एक वर्ड आना चाहिए था इसमें in papers through professional courier and post parcels. However, the assistant of commissioner of customs valued these drawings and designs and levied duty on them. Now, RST Limited contended that custom duty cannot be levied on drawings and designs as they do not fall in the definition of the goods under the Custom Act 19. Do you feel the stand taken by RST Limited is tenable in law? That means what they are trying to ask is, can the custom duty be charged on the designs or drawings that is in the form of papers? So what we have to, how we have to conclude on this, whether the custom duty is chargeable or not. First, we have to assess this case in terms of the definition of the goods. If yes, the design and drawings in the form of papers falls in the definition of the goods, custom duty will be charged, otherwise not. So they have given anything, whether it is technology or any other intangible asset, if it is put on a media or a paper or on a cassette or on a disc or any other thing that becomes, through which technology information becomes movable, then that information can be false or falls under the definition of. So what is the checkpoint? Checkpoint is that whatever we are importing or exporting, that has been convertible into the movable form. If it is visible that it has been moved in this manner, then yes, custom duty is levied. Able to understand this case? Did you get an understanding about this case? What is the gist of drugs? What is the checkpoint that needs to be checked? Because cassettes can be moved, papers can be moved, disk can be information in the disk can be moved. So if what is how you have to analyze it? If it is in the movable form, then yes, you can conclude duty can be levied on that. Just clear? So it has been concluded that stand taken by RST Limited is not correct as per the provisions under the. Okay. So now moving into uh, next definition. It talks about the import, further imported goods, and importer. Everything relates to when anything is moving out, bringing into India from the place outside India. It will mean import, and if it involves movement of the goods, such goods are known as the imported goods. Okay, and importer means the person who gets clear those goods for the home consumption. It can be honor or it can be a beneficial honor or it can be any person who is holding on behalf of the importer. All are covered under the definition of importer. Clear? Method of valuation of drawings. See, normally it is the price, the SP, which has been agreed on between the buyer and the seller. Likewise, goods. Goods, you are procuring any goods, you are importing any goods. The rate per unit is defined and there will be exchange rate because the other country is following some other country. Similarly, is the information technology. You are going to get some software or any sort of information technology related to technology. The price is predefined, negotiated with them. So accessible value is normally identified. Basic value, I can say, is the price determined written on the purchase orders or on the documents related to import and the exchange rate to convert it into the INR. Based on that, the rate of duties are applied and custom duties worked out. So this is how these are valued. Hope it's clear. What's your complete name from MR Sharma? Like, I can just address you by your first name. Okay. Hope it's clear, Mr. Sharma. Method of evaluation of drawing software under GST. See, GST application command is the you are assessing the value first of all for the purpose of charging the custom duty. Once it has been imported, then yes, the GST is charged. IGST, integrated GST, will be charged on that. Software under GST means what? How you want to? What exactly you are looking for in this? Like software under GST means what? The valuation for the purpose of charging GST? Okay, is it service and not goods? No, again, see, getting the support service, buying a software is a good. Providing the support services to run that software is a service. You got my point? See, you are taking Tally software is there. Tally is not selling the product to every other person who is using. They are just giving the license, and that license gets renewed every year. So that is the service they are providing. licensing of software. But there are certain customized software. The software manufacturing companies, they are selling that software. That is to the specific company or something. Then it can be termed as good. Okay. Okay. So moving further, now in custom acts, see how minutely custom acts has covered the definition, the meaning of goods, meaning of import, meaning of entry, and now the meaning of India also. But because whatever we are talking in the context of India, the Indian boundaries, import, export, goods, then the levy of duties. So it is pertinent or important to understand the definition of India as defined under the Customs Act. So, as per subsection 27 of 2 of Customs Act, India includes the territorial waters of India. So this is the definition given under the Act that India includes the territorial waters. Why we have earlier concluded that territorial waters are part of India? Because of this definition given under the law that India includes the territorial waters of India. Clear? Now, the term India is an inclusive definition and includes not only the landmass of India but also the territorial waters. That is the 12 nautical miles, and they have given the conversion also of miles into kilometers or feet. Clear? So, a vessel not intended to deliver goods. What is the checkpoint in this definition? What is the understanding which you can apply in the case studies? Is that a vessel not intended to deliver goods should not enter these ports. Okay? Clear? अगर वो enter कर जाता है, if they enters into the territorial territory, then and if they come to the port, then they are liable to pay the duty. Okay. Now, till now we have studied the definition of the territorial limit, territorial water. Now, Custom Act is talking about something called Indian custom waters. There is a difference between the two definitions. Okay, so now subsection 28 of 2 defines Indian custom waters. The term Indian custom waters means the water extending into the sea up to the limit of exclusive economic zone. Till now we have studied the limit of territorial waters. Now they are talking in terms of exclusive economic zone, which is again defined under section 7 of the territorial waters. And continental shelf, exclusive economic zone, and other maritime zone act 1960. And what they say that it is the 200 nautical miles from the base. Okay, whenever we are talking about the territorial waters, the understanding is 12 nautical miles. Whenever we are talking about the exclusive economic zone, it will cover the 200 nautical. So it includes any bay, gulf, harbor, creek, or tidal river. India includes the surface of a sea in the territorial waters, the airspace above, and the ground at the bottom of the sea. This is what we have just studied earlier. So my Indian custom waters are covering up to 200 nautical miles. Thereby, Indian custom waters cover both. So, Indian custom water definitions covers what? Both the Indian territorial waters and exclusive economic zone. So, whenever the term Indian custom water means this distance, this area extends up to 200 nautical miles. So this is the difference between when we are talking about the territorial water or when we are talking about the Indian custom water. So now just to explain the application of this, there is an example given in the notes. If the proper officer of the customs has reason to believe that any vessel in Indian custom water is being used in the smuggling of any goods, he may at any time stop any such vessel and examine, search any goods in the vessel. That means The officers of customs has the authority to the extent of custom waters, the Indian custom waters. They can go to that extent. They are not breaching or they are not trespassing the Indian boundaries because they are doing that activity within the economic exclusive economic zone. Now, the same thing is explained in case law 2. It includes the definition of stores also. So, stores, what is the definition of the stores? It means anything that is used in a vessel or aircraft. It even includes the fuel and spare parts and other articles of equipment, whether or not of immediate fitting. If you have seen the working in the companies, in the manufacturing companies, say what is the consumable in case of a chair? If you are manufacturing a chair, what you can conclude as the consumable? It is the nut and bolts can be termed as the consumable. In case of a garment, you can say the buttons, the thread, the labels, laces, those can be termed as stores or consumables. For machines on which that product is being manufactured, requires many spare parts, the sewing machine. So similarly is the vessel or the aircraft. They are also constructed with some equipment or certain parts. So anytime any of the parts get damaged, so it is not mandatory that it should be used immediately. It can be kept for further use only. So anything that has been kept in the vessel or aircraft, including fuel, which is going to be used in that aircraft or vessel, that has been termed as stores. May not be for immediate, but for later on. So if we just go through the case law number 2. Case law 2. A big ship carrying merchandise and stores enter the territorial waters of India, but it cannot enter the port. Now, in order to unload the merchandise, lighter ships are employed. तो एक बड़ा शिप था, टेरिटोरियल वाटर्स तक आ गया, लेकिन वो पोर्ट तक नहीं जा सकता है. They have used a smaller boat to ship the to place the goods that ship is carrying to the port. So now in this case study, we have to just identify whether the stores consumed on board by the ship or by the small vessels that are shipping or transferring the goods from the ship to the port. What all stores has been consumed, whether the custom duty is chargeable on those stores or this is the case. This has came in CMA final December 2013. So it's a very interesting case. So how they have just concluded is, shall I read the complete case law? So in order to unload the merchandise, lighter ships are employed. Stores are consumed on board the ship as well as by the small ships. Examine whether such consumption of stores attract custom duty, port relevant sections and case law if any. Stores are supplied to the above ships. Will such supplies be treated as export and be entitled to drawback? That means first thing is that can the duty be charged on the stores used by the ship on board or by the small ships, or the goods that has been transferred using the small ship amount to export or not, and any duty drawback can be availed on. So first you have to classify whether it has been export or whether it terms to be export or not. So bringing of stores is treated as import. Yes, means if you were bringing that was stores were the goods that you were shipping or importing, then it would amount to be import. But the stores have been consumed by the ship itself on board, then that consumption is exempted under section 87 of the act. That is foreign going vessel. That means any material that has been consumed on board in the ocean while the vessel is going, that is the foreign going vessel. then that consumption is exempted under section 80. So for this, hence we can say that any consumption of stores, although the ship is into the territorial water, that will not attract the import duty. Similarly, the small ships that are carrying the goods from the bigger ships to the port, any stores consumed by those smaller ships will also not amount to import, because those small ships simply transshipping the goods from the bigger ship to the port. So it is also into the same status as the big ship is, that while in the means it's in the form of foreign going vessel, and they are just transmitting the goods, and any source consumed by those smaller ships will not amount to import, and hence not attract the import duty. But the goods that has been transshipped by the smaller ships from the bigger one will definitely amount to. Will such supplies be treated as export, and these are treated as ocean society, and hence the stores consumed will be exempted from the duty? Store, okay. They are simply talking if the stores are supplied. See, from the port, if certain stores have been supplied, the smaller ships are taking the goods and giving it to the bigger ship, then yes, that will amount to be export. And then in that case, it will be entitled for the duty. Here, in the question we just missed to read that stores are supplied to the above ship. If the small ships are collecting anything from the port and supplying it to the bigger ship, then that item will amount to export under the customs. Is it clear till now? Is it clear? Students, please confirm. Then we can just move ahead with the next definition.
Uh, if the stores and consumers are consumed, if the
I'm unable to hear. Can you please write in the chat box if possible? Difference of supplied and consumed. Okay. Difference of supplied and consumed means, see, there is some ship is lying into the territorial water. I'm unable to hear if anyone is speaking and trying to say something. I'm unable to hear. Your voice is not coming clear. So consumed means whenever the ship is staying and consuming, see, some of the fault happen in the ship, because see, ship once the ship is ready to deliver the goods or leaves the port from the destination, from the port of you can say uh, for the port of arrival. If a ship say a ship is has started from USA and the material is to be supplied into India, so the vessel starts from USA port. So during their travel, anything can happen in the ship. Any spare part can get damaged. So they have to keep some spare parts in buffer, which is expected that if this happens, we have to make it functional, because ship cannot stay in mid of the ocean. So the ship normally carries those stores with them. Because normally it takes a good amount of time, say a month, for traveling from USA to India by ship. So then certain spare parts are kept as buffer, and those spare parts, in case of any defect, are being used in the ship itself to make it functional, to make it running, moving. So those are termed as consumed. Supplied means if that ship is carrying certain spares, it is a spare. Say I'm in India, I've ordered certain spares from outside. And I'm into manufacturing of garments. I've ordered threads, I've ordered labels, and I'm importing those things, and those are being supplied by that ship to us, then that will amount to supply of stores. Is it clear? Brampa. Brampa, is it clear? What is the difference between supplied and consumed? Consume means it is for self-consumption, and supplying means you are supplying the goods for others' consumption. It can be manufacturer or it can be end use. So now, in case stores are consumed within Indian territory, how it is regarded as export? If in case stores are consumed, and that is why Mr. Sharma, actually, while reading that case, we missed to read in the last line. If you see, stores are supplied to the above ship. Stores are supplied to above ship means smaller ships are taking something from the port and it is supplying to the bigger ship. So then anything which is going outside the boundary of India will amount to export. So in case stores are consumed within Indian territory, it is not regarded as export. Stores are not consumed within Indian territory. Actually, that ship was standing in Indian territory, just the goods are transmitted, and from there, certain goods are being taken by the small ship. Very briefly, they have just in this one sentence, they have completed the whether it is export or not. They have just covered. Stores are supplied to the above ships. Stores are supplied to the above ships. There are certain stores that are supplied to the above ships also. Then in that case, it will amount to export. Export will always come into picture only when certain goods are supplied from Indian land to a foreign land. Clear? It is not consumed within an Indian territory. Hope it is clear, Mr. Sharma. Okay, thanks for confirming. So we will just take this definition, person in charge. How many more definitions are there? So, students, will that be okay if we just complete the definitions today? Okay, and in the next class we will take the elaborate the all the provisions covered under this note. Will that be okay? Yes, please. Okay, thank you so much. Because starting a new topic at this time, it is going to take good time to discuss in detail. So let's complete the definition today, and we'll start from page number 16 in the next class. Okay. So let's complete these three definitions quickly. That what is the understanding of person in charge, because why they want to give the definition of person in charge, there are certain obligations or duties to be performed by the person in charge under the custom act. So and hence the definition of person in charge becomes important. In case of vessel, aircraft, train, vehicle, they have given that who can be the person in charge. So as per the act, in case of vessel, it is the master. Master of vessel. Whosoever is designated as the master of vessel will be the person in charge. In case of the aircraft, the commander or pilot in charge. There can be co-pilot, but the pilot in charge, as defined for that specific movement for specific travel, that person is responsible to conduct all those duties that are assigned under the law to be done by the person in charge. Train, the conductor or guard or other person having direction of the train. Means whosoever is controlling the direction of the train will be termed as the person in charge, and he is means he is liable to perform the duties in that capacity. Now, vehicle, in terms of vehicle, when there is movement in the land, then only the vehicle will come into the picture. And in case of the vehicle, who is the person in charge? The driver or other person in charge of the vehicle. पहले कौन हो गया? Driver हो गया. But otherwise also, if any person is authorized as a person in charge, then that person will become the person in charge under the law. Any other convenience, the person in charge means it is should be in writing or authoritative, which clearly stating that this person is the person in charge for. specific conveyance through which the movement of the goods is happening. Clear, students, the person in charge, the definition of person in charge? So now, bill of export. Like we have studied under the definition of entry, the bill of entry. So in terms of export, it is the bill of export. I'll just quickly read out the definition. The exporter of any goods shall make entry thereof by presenting to the proper officer in case of goods to be exported by land. A bill of export in the prescribed. Means when you are presenting the goods to the proper officer in case of exporting of certain goods by land, then there is a prescribed form which is again giving briefing all the details, and that document is called the bill of export, and it is being generated by the department only. It is not from the manufacturer side, the bill of export. Now there is whenever the goods are being imported, there is one memorandum that is to be produced by the person in charge. That is why the definition of the person in charge is important. So this is something called um, Import Goods Memorandum (IGM) that requires to be produced to the custom department or the officers proper officer by the person in charge. So the procedure of this producing this is, and there is an amendment in the procedure. So I'm just giving a reading of this. On receipt of representation from the trade that owing to tedious processes of the IGM amendment, there is reluctance to avail the facility of advance or prior bill of entry. The Department of Revenue prescribed revised procedures, and that has clarified that the responsibility of amendment in the IGM rests solely with the shipping line or agent as they file IGM with the customs under Section 30 of the Customs Act 1962. That means in the filing of the IGM by the shipping line or the agent, then the fine or the penalty imposed by the custom department will be borne by the shipping line only. IGM means earlier the responsibility was there with the consignees. Now they have clearly stated that producing of IGM with the custom department is the sole responsibility of the shipping line or the agent, and they are responsible to pay the fine to the custom department. So no fine penalty is required to be imposed on the consignee or otherwise, and no request of any amendment in the IGM from the customs broker or importer will be entertained. Whatever amendment in the IGM is required in the information contained in the IGM, it can be solely entertained by the shipping line or the agent. Shipping line means the shipping line that is carrying the products. That is carrying the products. It is not, see, I am the importer, I am importing certain goods from US, so I have aligned with the shipping line that yes, my goods should be handed over to such and such shipping line, which will be bringing the goods to the Indian. So now the person in charge of that shipping line, of that ship, of that vessel is responsible to produce the IGM to the custom department. If within the defined timeline the person in charge of that vessel does not submit that IGM with the custom department, then the penalty because of delay in depositing should not be borne by the importer or the consignee. Is it clear? That's what I told. See, how I just try to explain is, see, it is not the manufacturer who can directly visit the ports, the custom ports defined under the Act or by the CVIC. It is the mediators who have the access of the customs area or the custom ports. So port trust means what? Means the people who are dealing into the material only, who are taking the material from the people who want to export it, the manufacturers or the business traders who want to export the goods. So they are handing over the entire customs practices are being followed by the custom department people only. They are designated C&F, so they are processing, doing all the procedures and formalities for the shipment of those goods on behalf of the manufacturers. So they are ultimately termed as custodians. It is not the manufacturer of the product. We can directly not have any access to the port. We just hand over our shipments to them. Then they are doing the further procedures related to the shipment, whether it is import or export. They just get it. They just get the shipments clear from the customs and hand it over to the importer or export or load it to the vessel. They get it loaded to the vessel. They are the real custodians. So, students, shall we cover this in the next class? There are few more definitions. Hello? These are appointed under the section of Customs Act. Yes, these are appointed. These are appointed under the Act only. These are appointed. These are clearly defined under the Act. These people, clearing and forwarding agents, and they are appointed. So, students, remaining definitions I'll just cover in the coming class. We will be will sharply start at 6 p.m. In the next class. Hope it is on Saturday this time. The next class is on Saturday. Are you able to hear my voice, students? Yes, it is coming Saturday. Yes, it is on coming Saturday. Yes, on 24th, 6 to 8 p.m. Okay, so uh, hopefully in the next class we will cover this note. Hopefully in the next class we'll try to cover this note. So shall we wind up the class for today? Okay, thanks a lot for being there. And okay, yes, and we'll get more interactive and more understandable in the coming classes. Fine. So thank you, students. I'm ending this session.